Good evening. This is going to be an interesting talk for most of you because this is a subject that I know we've all heard about somewhere along the line. We all heard about alchemy, and we all know the mystic part of alchemy of how we always thought that they were going to transmute metals into gold. And we've looked at wizards and all this other stuff throughout the course of history. And so we have painted in our minds this wonderful picture of this great ancient time when people were able to manipulate all these things. And yes, to some extent, there was some transmutation of metals. And you'll go through this, you'll see some of the processes that they had produced and found out that they never really made gold, but they made a finish on some of the metals that looked like gold. But in the process, as they were doing this, it really became the prototype of modern chemistry, which, believe it or not, what they did find was incredible to get kick-started modern chemistry of today. So it was really important. What we have here, as you see right here, the magnum opus. And the secret of Freemasonry starts with that. And what is the magnum opus? That is considered the great work. Now, if we look over here, we can see some of the great work. If we want to talk about the transmutation of metals. And I took this picture on purpose because as we go through the lecture, you're going to see some interesting things that will relate to this picture. First, we have him with a bellows because he's stoking a fire. And everything in alchemy has to do with fire. Fire is what transmutes and starts the process. But also here, he has a still. And a lot of times after something was put into fire, it was distilled for purity. At the same time, when you look through the picture, we have a guy who's kind of peeking there, wanting to find the secrets of what they're doing. The man in the back is holding up a glass, which would be indicative of what they call spagyriac, which was one of the parts of alchemy. Besides the transmutation of metals, they also did tinctures, but they called them spagyriacs because what they did is they didn't use another element in it, as tinctures always have alcohol or water or some other base added to the plant material. They didn't. So their elixirs were completely pure. And then we have a little grindstone here, which of course would be in any good lab. You have a big hearth here. You could almost look like you'd be a blacksmith. But the interesting here, he's got his books. He's got all that. But the nice part here is what I look at. It looks like those are the experiments that didn't work, doesn't it? Kind of tossed to the side. Trial and error. We tried and tried and tried and put it. So that would be what we would believe and what we would think about in that whole mystic idea of alchemy and being in the lab and stuff. But really what we're looking for in alchemy is called the occulum lapidum. And what that really means in Latin is really hidden stone. So what is the hidden stone? And if anybody reads a lot on alchemy, you'll always talk about the philosopher's stone, the hidden stone. And it doesn't make any sense. Well, tonight, by the time you're done, that's going to make a lot of sense. If I do my job right. Let's start off with some famous alchemists, because the reason I'm doing this is starting at this base. It's going to give us an idea of the length of time alchemy has been around. Now, some of you were there for the talk on Thoth. And here he is right up here, Thoth and Hermes, right there. And as you notice, all this is Hermetic. Always goes back to Thoth and Hermes. We have Melchizedek from the book of Genesis. Now, Melchizedek, think of that. He was from the Old Testament. He was the lineage of Jesus. Jesus was ordained through that, the Catholic Church, through Melchizedek and Abraham. Now we have Aristotle and Plato, but notice I have pseudo next to it. The reason why, there were a couple of people that did write as Plato and Aristotle, but they weren't Aristotle and Plato. So they're known as pseudo. No one knows their real names, but there was a difference on what they had written. We come here, look at this, 11th century, Roger Bacon, Albertus Maximus. Now here's another priest and a bishop, a pope. How's that? Pope, 13th century, Paracelsus. Now here's a very big name in alchemy is right there. Basilius Valentinus, or known as Basil Valentine. He was a very important character. Sir Isaac Newton. We all know Sir Isaac Newton. He even did one of the translations of part of an emerald tablet. Believe it or not, in alchemy, very big in that. Another one is Cagliostro. I put Cagliostro in there because he was kind of an odd individual. He was a Freemason, and he was an alchemist. And it was interesting the time that he went that I'm actually trying on one of the other lectures to put together how he was connected with the pirates of Madagascar and the Knights Templar, because he was a Knights Templar also. But that's a different one. And look at this. In our century here, one of the most famous psychiatrists around, Carl Jung. And Jung was always the one with Freud. They were at opposites on many a thing between them two. He was very much into the esoteric. And even back in the 60s and 70s when I was a young fellow and reading a lot of their stuff, it was amazing how keen he was on human behavior through the esoteric. Very intelligent man. So let's look at some basic facts of alchemy. If we look at the name of alchemy, it really started off, and believe it or not, it was an Arabian term, al-kemet. And al-kemet, when you take the words in Muslim, it's actually al is from, and kemet, the black land. And the reason why it was the black land, because the fertile soil of the Nile, when it overflowed, was black. And they believe that because of that, from the black land, is where alchemy got some of the reputation of being black magic. Interesting connection. But it all originated from the Egyptian god Thoth, who was the author of science, religion, mathematics, geometry, astronomy, philosophy, medicine, magic, the establishment of the heavens, the bodies, and the cycles of the heavens. In other words, he was attributed in the Egyptian dynasties as being basically the ruler of all physical matter, including the heavens. But in this next one, you'll see that he was in charge of physical matter, but he also had Mat, and she was his opposite. She was the spiritual. Now, I want to bring this to your attention first, because we're going to be going through this, the word opposites. In alchemy, you're going to be seeing a lot of that. That is one of the great keys when we talk about opposites. Well, that'll be polarities and stuff like that. Now here, we trace it through here, and we want to find the lineage of alchemy. It's interesting how it started, and we want to know how it got to the point where it is today. If we look, it started in Egypt some 4,000 years ago, in one of the first dynasties. There were 31 different dynasties of Egypt. And by the time of the 31st dynasty, they were now taken over by Rome. Well, the Rome brought the Greek influence. Then we have Alexandria. When Alexander took over and invaded Alexandria, he built the city there. Well, that's where a lot of the Greek influence from the Hellenistic area came in. And that's where a lot of the books were stored. And then it came over to the Arabs. The Arabs now took over. All these invasions. So you can see this blend of happening. This alchemy comes up, and all of a sudden now it becomes part of the Roman, part of the Greek culture, Alexandria, part of the Arabian. And a lot of the Arabs were fantastic alchemists. And if you really look it up on the internet, famous alchemists, they have a whole section of the Arabian ones. And they were really fantastic. We come over there, and as it comes to it, this is how we got Thoth and Hermes to come together as Hermes Trismegistus. How that all happened was the Greeks' term for Thoth was Hermes. And when they were putting all this together during the Greek periods, they decided that they needed to blend it there. And that's where we get the word hermetic. We hermetically seal things. Anything that's hermetic is hidden, sealed, put away, kept away in secret. And that's where Hermes came in. Trismegistus really meant 3 times great. But no one could figure out what 3 times great meant. Like 3 times great? Well, gee, I mean, did he do something great 3 times? I don't know. But really what it was, when we get down to it, was he was the one who was able to take the three parts of existence, of spirituality and physical matter, and put them together. He was able to rule all three. So he was 3 times great. That's what we want to do. We want to get to that same point. Now, through the ages, it was on this, you can see alchemy went through many different things, which we talked about a few minutes ago. They were under the physical, which was chemical, spagyrics and tinctures, which was all their elixirs, what they tried to make, because everybody has always tried to find that elixir of life. You know, that's been a big thing. That's been around forever. And the philosophical or magical, this is truly what alchemy was about. Never really about the other two. There were a spin-off. There were things that they did, but it wasn't what their foundation was all about. Because if you think about it, if Tho was the god of all those things, of mathematics, science, and everything you could possibly think about, the heavens, why would he really want to just make elixirs? It really wouldn't make sense. He didn't have to transmute metals, but he did embody the spirituality. Because if you were part of that lecture on Thoth, you would find that what he really dealt with was all the Egyptian gods. He kept the balance, the equilibrium of the sun and of the moon, the planetary orbs, and the balance of all the gods. So you can see where this part, the philosophical magical, makes much more sense. Now, alchemy also became the foundation of all mystic societies, and that includes Freemasonry. And I don't care where you go, the influence is in all of them, and religions. I don't care if it's Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam and the Muslim, all that comes from the same base. And as we go along, you'll see how some of that mixes in. I won't go deep into that because that's a whole subject matter to tie that in, but it really does. Now, all alchemic disciplines share the same elements, but for various allegorical interpretations. You see, as you go along, you'll find salt, sulfur, mercury. You'll find the same metals. You'll find the same planets. And all this will be melted together. And it doesn't matter if you were trying to make a chemical, a tincture, or magical. They still use the same elements. But on the philosophical magical end, it was allegoric. It truly was meant to hide things. If you tried to read some of the old books that they had, it made absolutely no sense. It really, you put 2 parts sulfur, 1 part salt, you know, and then you put this into the furnace and you put it into this particular distillation and they go through this whole thing, and by the time you're done reading it, it makes no sense whatsoever. It was done on purpose. So for 4,000 years, or close to it, alchemy was hidden. The real truth of alchemy was hidden from the average person. And it was hidden for several reasons. If you look back 4,000 years, there wasn't a lot of science around. People were not basically extremely educated. So these people who were educated, who had this knowledge, would always give it out from mouth to ear. Get that, guys? It was handed down from mouth to ear on purpose. It was not written. So only someone who they felt was worthy or intelligent enough to understand this information was given it. And even through the course of history, when all this was hidden, it's almost like they kept several people on the face of this earth with this information to constantly bring it forward. And they always kept it very quiet, because once you reach the highest state, there's no reason for you to have ego. There's no reason for you to go out there and use this magic for anything, because you finally realize that the spirituality that you've now acquired, in order to acquire it, gets rid of the ego, gets rid of your want for material things. It puts everything in perspective. So what do? They end up being quiet and hidden, and they really enjoy helping mankind behind the scenes. And that's what their ultimate goal was. Now, to accomplish the great works, all the disciplines used, as we talked about here, how they all shared the same stuff, the tria prima, which is the 3 primes, sulfur, salt, mercury, and the 4 elements, the 7 metals, the 7 planetary herbs, and harmonics. Now keep in mind salt, mercury, and sulfur, the body, the mind, and the spirit. Gee, the three things we're made out of, isn't it? Body, mind, and spirit. It's almost like the same things that we can talk about God. We talk about a Trinity. What do we talk about? The Spirit of God would be God, the Godhead, the Father. Jesus would have been the body because he became the Word, he became man. And the Holy Spirit would be the soul. We are made up the same way that God said he was going to make us in his image. And it's interesting how even here, the three ones, the body, mind, and spirit, continues forever. Now here we make that final connection, or that first connection, to Tho. Now this is the emerald tablet you hear me talk about, and some people will talk about all the time, the emerald tablets. There are 15 tablets. They're very difficult to read. Matter of fact, one of the brothers just came over to me the other day and said, I'm trying to read those things, and they're garbage. They don't make any sense to me whatsoever. And I said, you got to read them, you got to concentrate on them, and you really got to delve into them. It's almost like meditating on them, trying to extrapolate what the meaning would be. So we're going to take just one part that was translated by Sir Isaac Newton, and let's start with this one. It is true and certain without falsehood that whatever is below is like that which is above, and that which is above is like that which is below, to accomplish the one wonderful work. Make sense? Not really. What's the above and what's the below? Well, if we want to really get into this, the above would be your spiritual, be the heavens. The below would be secular, and would be the earth. But how do we get there, and how do we do the great work? That'll be coming up. All things are derived from the one only thing, by the will and the word of the one only thing. Isn't that the same thing of our Genesis? The Big Bang Theory. Nothing existed. God made an emanation. What was an emanation? Harmonic. It was a word that could not be spoken. And all physical matter became to life. There we go. The universe was created out of his mind by a vibration. Gee, yeah, we have it here. That's in our Bible, but that's kind of there too, huh? The father is the sun, the mother is the moon, the wind carries the womb, and nurse is the earth. Now that really confuses everybody. Well, the father is the sun and the mother is the moon, and we always know that we always have this juxtaposition between those two. The moon is always female in all esoteric stuff, and the man is always the sun. And it was the bridging of those two that created life. Without those, we don't have the cycles, we don't have the sun. But the interesting part is the wind carries in its womb. What wind? The wind doesn't have a womb, does it? What that refers to is the solar wind. How did they know about solar wind back then? It's the solar wind from the sun. We all know we have the solar wind that hits us. That solar wind was the seed for some of the life. And the nurse is the earth. Everything that we need to live on is grown and we're nurtured by the earth. Now, it makes a little more sense, right? We're nurtured by the earth. Everything. I mean, every prayer that we give before our blessing, before we eat, is what? Thank you for the bounty from the earth. Thank you for giving us all this. Again, another one of our connections there. But the good part of that is about the earth. Not only has it to do with that, but the alchemists, when they wanted to transmute metals, truly believed back then that if you had lead in the earth, that by the process of the earth alone, by the earth nursing it, it would become gold. That all metal had that little bit of gold in it, but it just needed to have time for the earth to work on it and make it into gold. So let's get it. If everything has a little bit of gold in it, maybe we can make it happen. Let's take our salt, sulfur, and mercury. Let's do some things with this and try and make gold. They made some grilly things, ferric oxide. They made a lot of good stuff out of it, but really didn't make the gold. Its power is perfect when it has been again changed into earth. What do you mean has been changed again into earth? Very confusing. This is going to be part of that, as above, so below. We'll skip that for the moment. Separate the earth from the fire, the subtle from the gross, but carefully with the great judgment and skill. The subtle from the gross. In alchemic terms, the subtle is the heavens. The gross is the physical matter. You need to separate those carefully with judgment and skill. And you'll see there's a process in why they say that. But I can't tell you now. We're not giving all the things away early. It ascends from earth to heaven, descends again, newborn to the earth, taking unto itself thereby the power of the above and below. Here we go again, the above and below. What ascends to the heavens from the earth and comes back again? What? Not telling you. Thus the splendor of the whole world will be thine, and all darkness will flee from thee. Well, doesn't that reek of one thing, enlightenment? Right? Thus the splendor of the whole world will be thine, and all darkness will flee from thee. That is enlightenment. And what he's trying to say is, if you could do this, ascend from earth to heaven, and then back again, newborn to the earth, you will now have all darkness dispelled, and you will be enlightened. This is the strongest of all powers, the force of all forces, for it overcometh all subtle things and can penetrate all that is solid. What's the one thing that can penetrate everything? Light. No, light can get blocked out. But it's close because light is part of this in a way which we'll see a little bit. It's harmonics, it's vibration. Vibrations can pass through everything. Why? Because everything vibrates. Every molecule, every atom vibrates. Everything is in motion at all times. It's never steadfast. It always moves. So keep vibration in your mind, because vibration is probably one of the most important things here. I'm giving you another key. I shouldn't do this. And thus the world was created, and the rare combinations and wonders of the many kinds are wrought. Hence I am called Hermes Trismegistus, having mastered the three parts of the wisdom of the whole world. What I have to say about the masterpiece of alchemic art, the solar work, is now ended. Notice what I said before about the wind? The solar work, the work of the sun, the creation, is now ended. So if you read that earlier, would that make any sense? It really doesn't. But with a little explanation, it's amazing how it can make sense. Now we're going to get to the confusing part. Okay? I promise you to confuse you. Here we go. Centuries ago, a student asked his master, Basilius Valentinus, which I spoke on the first page there about a very important alchemist, what is the secret of alchemy? And the master replied, in vitriol is the answer. Observe. Here it is. That's the key of the emerald tablets and the key of all alchemy. Sits right there in that emblem. Can you make any sense of it? Visita interiorum terra rectifante infinite alcotum lapidum. And what that says is, visit the interior of the earth and rectifying, discover the hidden stone. Now what the heck is this about? The center of the earth. We're going to visit the interior of the earth and rectifying, discover the hidden stone. What hidden stone? What is the stone? What is the earth? Here we go. We'll do a little explanation on this. Whenever you have an emblem with a large circle, as you see here, the outer circle denotes the macrocosm or the oneness. As we know in symbolism, that the circle, a lot of times, is the wholeness of God, right? It's the ultimate. It's the omnipresence. It's everything. That circle on the outside denotes the entire universe, the macrocosm. The little one inside, as you're going to see here, is the microcosm. So we have a macrocosm and a microcosm. So now we're talking about visiting the interior of something. Well, I'll give you a clue, all right? The interior of the earth is us. We're the earthly creatures. We're the earth. We have to visit ourselves. We have to visit inside ourselves. Gee, how do we do that? Introspection, analyze ourselves, meditation. But we have to visit inside ourselves to find the hidden stone. We'll get to the hidden stone also. But when we look at this, what's important about this, this is all the alchemic formula that's needed to get to that highest state of consciousness, that oneness with God, with the universe, to have all power, all enlightenment. So we go over here. We have the sun is pouring its essence into the chalice, just uniting their opposites. Notice opposites again. While the chalice is supported by Mercury, the hermaphrodite, uniting the opposites. Now Mercury was always considered hermaphrodite. He was neither male or female. Actually, he was both male and female. And what we're doing here now, as I said before, the moon is female, the sun is male, and they're both pouring their essence together into this chalice that's on top of Mercury. That is now considered the above. Look at, we have all the planets. We have Mercury and the other 4 planets and the 2 other orbs. That is the heavens. That constitutes the above. Now, what do we have here? We have 2 hands facing into each other. Again, opposites, polarity, pointing in. But one of the interesting things about those hands is it means there's work to be done. There's work to be done. Remember, we just talked about the great work, magnum opus. That's what we're here for. The great work is the achievement of that enlightenment in alchemy. So now we go down here. The center ring denotes that microcosm, which is really us. In understanding this emblem, that's where your focus is supposed to be. If you were meditating on this emblem, you would look at that center circle, and you would focus on that and see what your mind comes up with. So we go below the ring now. Below the center of the ring is the symbol vitriol on the opposite side of the center circle of Mercury. The hidden stone arises out of the unification of these 2. Here we go. Unification of opposites again. An above and a below, unifying to create what we're trying to find here as the hidden stone. This vitriol actually, when then was a little vessel that had an elixir in it. It was a special elixir that they made, and they considered that like the elixir of life. So that's why they considered that the vitriol. That was the power of that. The spheres of heaven and earth to emphasize the polarity above and below in a unification to attain the great work. Again, the above and below in the spheres of the heavens and the earth. And here we go now. The 3 shields are the 3 alchemic principles. The lion is sulfur. The 7-pointed star is salt. The eagle is mercury. And we go back to the body, mind, and the spirit. So what we're looking at here, if you go through all this and you can understand it completely, and you can do what they're talking about, rectify, which we're going to get into what we mean by rectify, what needs to be rectified, and what is the hidden stone? Well, there's 2 stones. There's the stone of the philosopher, and there's the philosopher's stone. We are the stone of the philosopher. In our state as we are now, we would be considered the stone of the philosopher. And if we really think about it, in our own lodges, what do we have sitting in the south? The rough ashlar, the stone, and what becomes the second stone? Right? At the senior warden is now the perfect ashlar. Nice, kind of melts in there a little bit, isn't it? But because there's 2 stones. The philosopher's stone is once you complete the great work. Here we go with that great work again. So what is the great work? How do we get there? What truly is the great work? In order for us to get to that enlightenment and understand alchemy for what it really is, not for what people thought it was. Yeah, here we go. This is a little more helpful, believe it or not. But before you embark upon understanding these charts, we need to put your mind into a different place. And here's what we're going to put. We are spiritual beings having a human experience, not a human being having a spiritual experience. We are so confused being humans, it's absolutely amazing. When all our religions tell us that we're spiritual beings. God made us. God made us in his image. We came down to earth, we got a body. When we're done with the body, we leave it and we go back up to him again. Why do we think we're human? Why do we think all spirituality is up there? If I ask you where the heavens are, the universe, what are you going to do? We're all going to point up there, right? But yet, we're all in the universe. We are standing right now on a planet in the middle of the universe, in the middle of the Milky Way, in a solar system. Why is the universe up there? You're in it. You're part of it. Every vibration, everything you feel. That's why they felt that the planets, the sun, the moon, the planets, and everything in the universe affected human life. Because, in a measured way, it does. It truly does. We know when the moon comes around, what happens? The tides. And of course, we always put the lunatics in there that, on those times the full moon, we howl and we do some weird stuff, right? Do the heavenly bodies affect us? Believe it or not, they do. If they affect our planet on a pull of gravity or a movement, it's affecting us. Imperceptible to us, possibly, but it does. So we're going to look at this, and this is really where we're starting to get into some of the guts. The 7 Hermetic principles: mentalism, correspondence, vibration, polarity, rhythm, cause and effect, and gender. Now, I want to bring your attention on this page here to a simple thing of the colors. I put these diagrams up here on purpose, because what are those colors? The colors of the rainbow. 7 colors of the rainbow, right? They're also the colors of the Kabbalah, which is the tree of life. Also, the colors of all the chakras in the Buddhism. All melt together. But what's interesting about the colors is we're going to go back to one word again: harmonics. Vibration, light, same thing. All your light has different vibratory grades. So we're back to vibration again. We're back to the point that no matter what we do here, it's the same here and the same here. If you're a Buddhist, you talk about from below to above to below. When they talk about the Kundalini and they talk about the body's energy, what happens? It starts from the lowest one, the root chakra, it goes to the sacral, and it goes all the way up to the crown chakra, and it comes all the way back down. And when your chakras are completely open and it's constantly moving, you're in good health, good spirits, you love life. If there's a blockage in one of them, life isn't right. You're angry, you're upset, you're anxious, you don't feel right, you don't know why. So that's why they say you have to balance your chakras. Now, on the tree of life, we also have those same vibratory things. And this is extremely important here because you're going to see in the next one. Notice here, mentalism. All is mind and everything is energy. The universe is mental. We spoke about that just at the beginning, that God created the universe out of thought. Now, we do the same thing. We think. You can sit there with your mind empty. That's fine. But the minute you have a thought, you just created a reality. Are not your dreams a reality? At the moment you're dreaming them, they are a reality. Can we fight the fact that a dream is a reality or not? Just because we don't feel it? It's not perceptible to us in the waking state? Is it truly unreal? Is it truly part of our subconscious? And if it is, our consciousness and subconsciousness happens to be the beginning of thought, as God did with the beginning of thought when he created the universe. So what you can create through astral projection and dream control, you can create as God created. Probably not physical matter, but it's there, and when you're in that realm, some dreams are pretty real. The second one, correspondence. Here we go again. As it is above, so it is below. As it is below, so it is above. Reflecting the congruent qualities. We're talking again spirituality and secular. That above and below. And the rectification of those two, which we'll go to rectification in a little bit. Vibration. Nothing is stationary. Everything vibrates, giving off light or sound. And that is absolutely true. Our bodies are nothing more, and all this table is nothing more than a bunch of atoms, and they're all vibrating. And theoretically, any physicist will tell you that if all of a sudden all those atoms jumped the same way, that whole table would lift right up. It'd actually jump. But it won't, because they're vibrating all different ways at all different times. But what makes different matter? Usually it's the vibration of those atoms. The different frequencies and vibrations create the different solids. But they're solid only to the fact that we perceive them as solid. Because if you look at an atom, it's 99% empty. It's an electrical charge. How does that become solid? That's empty. In theory, that is unreal. That is not solid. It's solid to our perception as a human, because in the human realm, that becomes solid. But in reality, that is as void as the universe. Concepts that are hard to grasp because we are being human and how we live our lives and what we've been taught. And what this does is really flips you over on the other side. And it's very confusing and almost unbelievable at times, but by the time you're done, if you want to research it long enough, you'll find it does make sense. Polarity. Again, opposites, huh? But back to that again. Everything is double, everything has its opposites, thus extremes meet. Polarity. We all talk about the duality in the universe. Light and dark, up and down, hot and cold, hard and soft, left and right, right? And if I could tell you that that doesn't exist, there are no opposites. There's polarity, but not opposites. Now, I know you're really looking at me strange. But I can prove to you there are no opposites. If there were opposites, there'd have to be a dividing line from one to the other. Where do you draw the line from light to dark? You can't. What is it? Light and dark is a measurement of one item. It's one item. It's the saturation or the absence of an item. Hot and cold. Where does hot end and cold begins? All depends if you like cold and hot. Some people get cold at 70 degrees. Some people get cold at 80 degrees. Some people get cold at 20 degrees. So where's hot and cold? What is it? It's the measurement of degrees of temperature. Up and down. It's degree of altitude. They are not opposite. They're the same thing. They're just the polarization of the extremes of them, but it's one item. That's one of the biggest and most difficult things to rectify in the alchemic process. We can talk about it, but to be able to understand it and feel it and to know the balance of such things is a very difficult thing. Now we got rhythm. All is the ebb and flow as demonstrated by action, reaction, advance, and recoil. And most of the ebb and flow is, everything's in rhythm. And if you think about it, light waves, is that a rhythm? Vibration, is that a rhythm? The ebb and flow of the tides? How about ourselves? Every day we have rhythms. I know 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I tank. You know, I'm done. Give me a Snicker bar. I need the energy. Right? We all have those ups and downs, those ebbs and flows, not only in our physical body and how we feel, with our blood sugars and when we eat and when we're tired, but we also have it in our mental attitude. You can go from feeling great one minute to being angry the next minute to coming out of that, and we ebb and flow. Our lives ebb and flow from day to day, week to week, month to month, and year to year. Everything has a rhythm. And the point is utilizing the rhythms. Alchemy teaches you, how do you utilize the rhythms? How do you get the best out of those rhythms? How can you control them? Cause and effect. Now that's a good one. Nothing happens by chance. Everything happens according to the law. Nothing escapes the law. God created it, nothing escapes it. Cause and effect is always there. You do one thing and this is going to happen. Do the other, this is going to happen. Then we say to somebody, well, what about something happening by chance? Well, it can happen by chance. Does that mean that there was no cause? By chance means you felt the effect, but what about the cause? The only thing it means, you didn't recognize the cause. Not that the cause wasn't there. You weren't aware of it. You didn't recognize it. The cause has to be there. Unerring law. Generation is manifested in everything, and everything animate or inanimate is masculine and feminine. This gender, I'm going to have to put it to you, has nothing to do with sex. That's the first thing people think about, male and female. It has to do with creation, not sex. Everything has the same. And if you go through the whole universe, as we talk about, we name things male and female. But all their attributes, we all have a male and female part of us. Everything does. Everything has its opposite part. Why? Because there are no opposites. We just said that, right? There's polarities, but no opposites. So we're all male and female, to some extent. Some a little more than others. And yes?
Even when you were talking about polarity,
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking, gender is even a polarity. Like all humans, start life genetically female, then you get a hormone bath that, you either masculinize or feminize. So,
Mm-hmm.
we think of that as polar opposites, but even that, if you look, that's a full spectrum. So.
Yeah, and it's interesting how we start as female, huh?
Yeah.
Then go to male. Yeah, God made the man, and then he took my rib away and he made my wife. That's why she's so cute. But anyways, but you're right. We all start off at that same base, and think about when the fertilization happens at that moment, there is no sex. Sex comes after what? A cause and effect. What was the cause? The hormones. What was the effect? The change of the sex into one instead of the two. But we do have the double elements. Now here we go with the alchemic symbols we talked about before. All these are used by everything, whether you're doing this part of it, whether you're doing elixirs, whether you're doing metals, it's all the same. They use this as a way of hiding all of this. That's what it was. They hid it just simply behind the wording. That's all. But they knew the influences of the heavens on us. When you really think about it, they didn't have television. They didn't have everything. Can you imagine after supper, if you were lucky to have supper, you would sit outside, probably by a fire. What did you have to look at?
The fire.
Yes, the fire and the heavens. The two things. The fire created for all of us, from cavemen or cave dwellers, as we call them now, not cavemen anymore. Politically correct is cave dwellers, right? We're cave dwellers, right? No gender, we're cave dwellers, right? No, but the point is, fire was an important thing to us. It was heat, it was light, it was everything, and so wasn't the sun. But we were afraid because every night the sun died, and every morning the sun was born again. And you'll find that in alchemy in some of the old texts, in some of the old ancient societies, how they really thought the sun died every day. Because don't forget, the world was flat. It wasn't round. It died. It got buried into the ground. The next day, it rose again. Uh-oh. Gee, we went below to above, from above to below. Didn't Jesus do that? He died, was buried. He came from above, went below, and where did he go? Above. Small things to think about, huh? I'm not here to tell you anything. I'm just here to make you think. Okay? So don't think you're going to be any wiser when you leave here, right? Maybe a little more confused, or you really think I'm a nut. But anyways, let's go to the next thing. Here we go. Isn't this beautiful? I know you're looking forward to this. This one here is Azuth, the ritual mandala. This is the same thing we looked at from the Emerald Tablet emblem, but it's from the Greek. And what they did, A to Z, was Alpha Omega for the Greeks, and that's why they made that term. Now, this is going to give us a little more than what we had before. In the other emblem, I talked about the pots of alchemy from the Hermetic pot of the Emerald Tablets, the elements that were involved in the emblem. Now, when we're looking at this emblem, this thing talks a lot more to us than that one. Because what they did now, they took a lot of what we just talked about in those first slides and put them all together in here. This is one of the most important ones in alchemy if you really want to understand alchemy. And we can, this is intense. Before we even go into this calcination, fermentation, and all this here, we're going to look at something in general. First of all, the man is standing here between the earth and the water. He's holding a feather, and he's holding a torch, right? So what does he have? The 4 elements, right? He's got fire, earth, water, and air. He is holding the 5 elements. This shows that us as humans, we're in the earthly fashion. Those are the 4 elements that we have. There's actually a 5th one, the 5th element, and I'm sorry when I said 5th because the 5th is those stars, the 5th element, which is right there, but we'll go into after. All right. Now we look on this side here, and what do we have? We have like a dragon, a fire over here, and we got a king sitting there with his scepter. And what that's really denoting, he's on top of the lion. What that's really denoting with his scepter is that he is control. He has authority, right? Now, he's already ascended a little bit. And what this little dragon down here is about is that as he shed away some of his imperfection, if it happens to come back again, this dragon here is going to consume it. On this side, because he denotes intelligence. The man denotes intelligence, ladies. Okay? That's that side. This side, the woman denotes emotion. All right? Now, she is sitting on top of a fish. In her hand, she has a bow and arrow and a sheaf of wheat. Now, it's interesting. Why is she on a fish? She's on a fish because what she's doing is she's holding that fish. And the reason she's holding that fish is she is keeping the things that are hidden from her king to protect him from the hidden things. At the same time, she has the bow and arrow. And the reason the bow and arrow, she's emotion. And being emotion, pain, suffering, hurt. Isn't that the things we think about emotion most of the time when you say you're so emotional? What is it? You're crying. And the sheaf of wheat is about fertilization, being fertile. That's what she's got there. So that's just on this little bottom section here. Now again, look at the sun and the moon, right? The spirit and the soul. And you've got this little creature here, which is the lizard. He loves the fire because, you know, they're cold-blooded animals. They got to be warm. And this one here is the bird, which is denoting the spirit. He is denoting the soul. And up here, that's the ascension to the heavens. Now, that's just that part of it. But that's not the story. Believe it or not, that's not the story. That's only telling us some of the elements we talked about previously. The story truly comes when it comes to this. Now, notice these numbers, okay? This actually coordinates in 1 and 1, 2 and 2, and stuff like that. And we're going to go around here. First of all, we got this cube. And we, of course, that is a corpus, which means body. That cube is the stone. That is, right now, before we take our journey, before we take the journey from below to above and back, this right now is the stone of the philosopher. But what we're going to do now, we're going to come around this whole thing, and by the time we come back, we're going to make the philosopher's stone. We are going to transmute ourselves from the basic human element of just a plain human being as that stone of the philosopher to an enlightened person. All on this emblem in this information here. Start off number 1, right here, number 1. Calcination, the burning by fire into ashes, purification, destruction of ego, attachment to material possessions. Uh-oh, we're starting to look at what? Cleansing ourselves and transforming ourselves, aren't we? So when they talk about calcination, what it was that even in chemistry, when they started to do something, they would burn it in the fire, take it down to its most element compound, by doing that, you would see what it really is. What the real element of that is it carbon? And one of the interesting things that they thought in alchemy with carbon was so important was carbon makes the one most perfect thing in the world. What does carbon make? Diamonds. Where? In the nursing or the womb of the earth. Gee, we said that earlier. We were talking about that, in the womb of the earth, that it can transmute things. Well, carbon under fire and pressure, heat and pressure, becomes diamonds, the most perfect element besides gold. So you can see where they would think that lead in the womb of the earth, being nursed, could do the same thing. But really what we're talking about here is purification of our minds, in destruction of the ego, in attachment to material things. Now, that's even Buddhist. You meditate, you get rid of your attachment to physical things. The more you're attached to that chair or to things that you love, the more you are chained to the earth and the less spiritual that you can be. So now, after we burn it, we got to separate it now. So we're going to go into dissolution first. And dissolution is dissolving ashes in water. So that'd be the next thing they did. When they dissolved the ashes in water, all the impure stuff would be taken away, and they had their base element in front of them. But for us, it's going to be the breakdown of artificial structures of the psyche, immersion in the unconscious. In other words, we're going to start clearing our mind of all the superfluities of life, of all the things that we think about that cloud our mind that really are worthless. And we do. We busy our minds with all sorts of stuff, especially worrying about tomorrow. I got a meeting tomorrow, and I'm going to worry all about it, because I know they're going to ask me these questions. So I'm ready for these questions, and you worry all night. And guess what? You go to the meeting, and they don't ask a damn question. So you worried yourself for nothing, right? And we busy our minds. We make ourselves anxious. Why? Because we focus on things that are not essential. Now, we go to separation. We're going to remove self-inflicted restraints, prejudice, beliefs, phobias, and misspent energies. Again, prejudices, beliefs, and phobias. All those things drain our energies. We focus on things that are unessential to life or to spirituality. So now, as you can see what we're doing, as we're going along here, and now I'm going to take those three, and we're going to go around the circle. Here we go. We have the crow standing on top of the skeleton, the skull, okay? That's where he's talking about that crow. What he's talking about is that is basically the base element of human when you get to the skeleton. You burn it to ashes. This next one comes up with dissolution. The crow now is looking at himself in the water. Now notice the crow is black, but the water his reflection's white. Why? Because now what he's doing is he's breaking down and he's getting rid of all the bad stuff, and he's becoming a little more pure. In the next one now, in separation, notice there's two birds. And the two birds are separating mind and spirit. They're taking your mind and your spirit, and they're separating where they can look at each other and say, you exist. You're there. Instead of being hidden. So those are the first three. Now we get to number 4. Rectification. And in this one here, in number 4, we have conjunction. Now notice what they have over here. Notice we went from lead to tin to iron to gold to copper. We're going to go all the way up. And there's a reason why the gold is in the middle. And you're saying to me, but the gold's going to be the top. Right? Gold should be number 7. No. No. Gold is going to be number 4 because gold has to be on top. This is the circle there, it's the top. All right? So now, once we get here, right, the conjunction, and here it is. Soul and spirit leaving the earth with the crown. Purified elements rectified in pure. You have now attained the highest level. You've attained that gold. You have attained in yourself. Now notice right now we're working in ourselves. You have attained in yourself purity, as you would if you were a Buddhist monk and got into that highest consciousness. You now have attained it. So why don't we just stay there? Well, we really can't. Because we're really going to come down to earth, really going to come back. So now as we continue, as we've gone from below to above, now we have to take this beautiful purification from above and bring it back down again, because we were the stone of the philosopher, impure, and we're now going to become the philosopher's stone, which is pure. So we got to take this purity and get it back down. So from below to above, from above to below. That's why they say, as below, so is the above, and back again. Because once you become pure, it's all pure. So, as below, so above. It's the same. So now we're going to fermentation and putrefaction. Ambrosia of the gods. The first solidification of soul, spirit, in the bird's egg's nest of the mystic birth. Well, that's a mouthful, isn't it? Right? Really what that's talking about is that once you become pure here, the fermentation is like making wine. You're taking this element, this purity that you just do, and now, as they claimed it, the ambrosia of the gods. That's the beauty. That's the love that you're feeling. That's everything that's happening. And that mystic birth, well, that mystic birth is about you being reborn. You coming back down pure. That mystic birth of purity. And then we go to the next one here, right? After fermentation, we go to distillation. Now remember in the first slide, he had a distillery there. And why the distillery? Like all of us, you make wine from fermentation. And then after you make wine, you distill it to make brandy. Or you ferment potatoes or grains, and you distill it and make what? Vodka, all your spirits. And what are they? They're pure. Distillation creates pureness. So in your distillation here, as you're coming back down, what you're really doing is you're really finally at this point in time becoming that actual pure material, spiritually. Now notice what's here. It's a unicorn. Now the unicorn is a mystic thing, and the funniest part is that the unicorn usually denotes things that are hidden or things that will be coming up. And the funniest thing is that a unicorn is hidden to everybody but virgins in mystic realms, in mysticism. Only virgins can see unicorns. I don't know why, all right? But they're the only ones that can see them. Well, if you really think about it, what's a virgin? We're back down to virginity and purity again. So that's what you have there. And the unicorn, the vapor rises and condenses. Again, distilling, what happens? The vapor rises and condenses to purity, right? And the last one is right here. Child from the open grave, the resurrection, return to the Garden of Eden, the philosopher's stone, all three are rectified. What you've finally done is when you come here, and I think we see this in some of our Masonic thing, the coffin, the spade, and that, right? Right? When we talk about that we're going to finally raise ourselves after death, right? That's exactly what this is. What this is now, it's the resurrection. You have made it from here when you were impure. You went through, you purified yourself to here, come into the highest height of enlightenment you can, and you come back down to the earth as the philosopher's stone. What's important about becoming a philosopher's stone?
Helping others.
You got it. It's the one thing all religions teach us. They all teach us the same thing, one thing, love. Every one of us teaches us to treat everybody the same, that we're supposed to be there to lead and to help people. But we can't because we're imperfect beings. And no matter how hard we try, it's difficult. It's truly difficult because we have our own problems. And you come home at night and you're upset and this and that from work, and how can you be loving? Well, when you can make this whole transformation of alchemic transformation all the way up and down again, you have shed all that from your life. You become the purity, as the Buddhists would say, balanced. Boy, we're talking about the polarity being rectified. If you're a Buddhist, he'd say, for every like you have an equal dislike. So the minute you like something, you created a conflict. The point is all things should be equal. You should approach all things with the same feeling, the same intent. Just always balanced. And that's why you'll always hear that, a balanced individual. Balance your chakras. Anybody confused yet? No, you guys are following this? Yeah? Yeah? Yes, no? Yes, no? You still think I'm a little nuts, but that's okay. Just a little. But, you know, it is difficult to understand that this could be a reality. I think that's hard, because all our religions teach us this, but they never really teach us a way to do it. I mean, we go to church all the time, and we do this, and we read all these religious books, and it always tells us that we should do this, that we should do that, we should embrace this. But no one tells us how do we get rid of the human imperfections. Alchemy, from the beginning of time, had the answer from God of what it takes to rectify being a human being. Because remember, we are spiritual beings, right, in a human existence. Boy, we are going to go right by this, but I'm going to show you how difficult it truly is. That was not the path. That was the explanation. Now you got to do the work. I didn't tell you what to do there. I just told you what the path was to get it done. How do we do it? These are the keys. These are the ones where you're really going to love this one. But anyways, there are 4 stages of the great work. You see, 1, 3, 12, 1, 3, 7, and 12. And they call it 1, 3, 7, and 12. Okay? First are the 12 disciplines we perform in our body. Now, we get them all on here. Why do we have to do this? Remember, as we were going around the circle, we were trying to shed things and get rid of things and purify ourselves? This is the way that has to be done. Not done with chemicals. It's not done with all those fancy words of calcination and stuff. It all has to do with this part here. Stage 1, inside yourself. We talked about that before. You were what? The stone of the philosopher. You have to go inside the earth. Well, I think we have to go inside. Fasting, study, meditation, and prayer. And once you can do all that, the hardest thing in life is realizing who and what you really are. If you want to be devastated about who you are, get to that point. Truly get to that point. And you will wake up one morning and you will feel so devastated when you can look at yourself truly as you are, accept your faults and your shortcomings. And I don't mean just, yeah, I know I get angry sometimes. Yeah, no. I mean realize it. It is probably one of the most devastating things you'll go in your life emotionally once you pass that. Then the other one here is outer. And this is basically, on the outer ones, is how we interact with other people. I'm not going to go through all these, but anyways. It's how we interact. Now notice a big one here. Service, simplicity, solitude, submission, and service. And if you get a chance to read this, because I'll send this out after, but that is really nice. It really, how do we act as an outer person? As a balanced outer person. And then the group part. Confession, worship, guidance, and celebration. Nobody can do it alone. That's what that's about. I don't care if you belong to a church group, right? A fraternity, such as Masonry, right? We want to make men better, good men better. Gee, we already talk about this. But how? We have to do it together. Why? Because this is what we needed. We talked about this earlier tonight. Is there anybody that can guide us with these elements and help us through it? Because if you go the wrong way with it, you will be forever on the wrong way. You don't come back from the dark side. I'm saying it as the dark side, but it's using it for the wrong purpose. Using what you can get. So now, if you notice the 12, the 7. This is the 7. The 7 opposites. I know, there are no opposites. But we talk about these only in the fact of, again, seed, is born to die. Life in destroyer or death. And it just goes back and forth, and you can read those quickly. But the important thing here is what this emblem, again, another interesting emblem. I'm going to blow your mind on this one, because now this one is an amalgamation of a lot of things. Okay? Let's start at the beginning here. The circle, the microcosm. The baboon holding the globe. That usually denotes a transformation. When the baboon holds a globe, it's a transformation. Then we have inside the circle, look at that, the two squares. That two squares could be either one of two things. Melchizedek, that's his emblem from the Bible, or Islam. Either one. But what's in the center? That's Gemini. Oh my gosh, two again. Two with that other one. The twins. This side, the unicorn. Notice the unicorn, the female side. The lion, the male side. Intellect. Emotion. The traveler. What travels? Man is always connected to the sun in heavenly bodies. The woman is always connected to the earth, right? So the man, the traveler, the heavenly bodies, what? They move. They're in constant motion. The sun, the moon, infinitely move. And the stars. And that's why you have your little traveler here. Now notice male and female, both holding the caduceus. In her hand, what is she doing? Uh-oh, there we go, that thing of life again, that liquid of life that we saw at the beginning. And notice one cup is gold and one cup is silver, the two highest states of metal. And she's pouring this elixir from one to the other, which is basically the water of life, is what she's doing. You notice our pillars, the sun, the moon. We have the two dragons intertwined, creating the fire. That's the infinity. As all the heavens infinitely bound together, but the fire to do the work. And what is the work? The unification of the two. Notice they're separate here. What are they? They're conjoined. We have now taken the two and made them the one. But the interesting thing here is this, the caduceus. The caduceus was never the caduceus until World War I. Whether you believe it or not, when the American Army decided to make that a emblem of medicine. Really, that was from Thoth and from Hermes. But how do we do this again that we can get the influx of Buddhism? Here we have the two snakes. Notice the two different colors, as we have there. But in the intertwined as the DNA helix. The staff would be considered, as they say in the Orient, the Kundalini. And the Kundalini is the energy of the chakras going from the base to the top and back again. And on the top here we have the celestial wings that take you up. Interesting blend of things, huh? A little bit of Islam, a little bit of Christianity, a little bit of Thoth, a little bit of everything. Even a little bit of mysticism created in there. But notice, the vapors rise, the condensation, everything happening that we talked about earlier. Looking at these pictures and really understanding the symbolism in them gives you the understanding, because words, all this crap, doesn't do it. And they'll always tell you, you need to look at the emblems and concentrate on them, and the answers will come. How do you think I got so crazy? Huh? I mean, I don't have any twitch. But then we have the last two. The three orientations, emanations, and the final transformation. And we'll just briefly go on this. The three orientations is going to be this. That in the end, again, sacrifice, which is our secular human. Knowledge, which would be our mind. And spirituality is the love. The body, mind, and spirit comes up once again. Sulfur, salt, and mercury, all over again. That's an explanation, but we're going to skip that because it'll be way too long. Right, emanations, the vibrations again. The final attainment is being one with God, or true enlightenment, completing the process of the great work, as above, so below. When we finally reach that one point, if you were a Buddhist, you attained the nirvana, you got to the divine, you reached God, you saw the face of God, right? When that happens, that's exactly what they're talking about, the emanations. You will understand and know the vibrations. You will use those vibrations in your life to change things. And I just said that, okay? In the chemical wedding, I put that term in there if you ever want to read the manifest, the chemical wedding. As you probably know now what chemical wedding means. You're going through alchemy, the chemical, marrying them together. Okay, tough. Chemical wedding. I guess, see, you can do symbolism too. No, but really, that is good. That's very difficult reading because it is one of those convoluted little things. There's a few of the books out there that are really worth reading. Chemical wedding, it's nice to read, but I don't think you're really going to get much out of it more than what you've seen this evening. But it is good. And now, for the next to the last presentation we have, hey guys, look what we got here now. The Tree of Life, the Kabbalah, all the colors. Remember before I showed that one on the other slide with the vibrations and stuff? There you go. That is the Tree of Life from the Garden of Eden. Not the tree with the apple, not the serpent, not all the other stuff that they tell us. Believe it or not, this was given to us by God to get back to heaven, to get back to the spirituality that Hermeticism and everything brings us to that higher state, bring us back to God. Don't forget, what does He always ask us to do? If you're in the Christian religion at all, He always asks what? Come back to me. Come to me. I am here for you. Turn to me. Why are you always turning away from me? Come back to me. You are my children. Isn't it that base of Christianity? Right? This one, vitriol. Look at this. Written on the wall of a... Guys, what is it? Huh?
Grave?
No, chamber of reflection. You guys familiar with the chamber of reflection? Okay. That is a chamber of reflection. And you find this in most of the things that you will Google on chamber of reflection will have vitriol right on it. Gee, that's Masonic, isn't it? Why is vitriol on there? And why is there a rooster? There's a rooster there, guys. The rooster is mercury, salt and sulfur. Right there. That is introspection and rebirth. When you come here, what are you supposed to do in the chamber of reflection? Introspection. Look into yourself. Right? This is it. Humanity. The skull and crossbones only denotes humanity. Never was anything evil. Never was meant to be. Skull and crossbones on a Bible is what? Humanity supported by divinity. Has nothing to do with evil or poison or anything. Except when the pirates got it. And those pirates took it, and boy, they really did a job on us, didn't they? But this is another great emblem. Now notice all these different emblems, how they have so many different features. The other one, a little Islamic, right? Christian. What do we got here, guys? First, the lily, resurrection, new birth. Every Easter, right? The rose, things that are hidden. Rose Croix, alchemy. In here, Saturn, 8-pointed star for the 8 pillars of the Buddhist. The cubic stone. Here we go. Notice it's gold. That's the philosopher's stone now. It's gold. This side, the female and the male. Again, intellect, emotion, coming together. Yin and yang, vapors, going up and condensing. But the greatest thing here in this one here, I love this picture. We have the 2 hands. Work to be done, the flame. All work is done by what? By fire. Even Christ was baptized by fire the 3rd time in the desert. You'll always find fire is a thing that always goes into purity. But the great thing here is, here we go, Tho. Dun, 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 our Egyptian god Tho. And what's around him? The DNA, the cross of life. He's holding the scale of balance. This is Hathor. Hathor was another Egyptian goddess. She was the one that wasn't a very nice goddess, all right? She's the one that loved blood, so to speak. And that's going to play into this in a second. And what you see here is what? A rose on a cross, Rosicrucian, the rosy cross. And we have a balance here. Though, who was the scribe of Egypt, he would weigh the heart against the feather. And if the heart was lighter than a feather, then you went into the hereafter. You were going to go, and you got on that boat and went across the Nile. If it was heavier than the feather, you were in trouble. That means you were bad. And if you were bad, she ate your heart. Either she did, or there was always, you'll see other funerary text pictures that they'll have on there where there's always be like this wolf that would be there. And the wolf would eat the heart. And it'd be like going to hell. You were gone forever. And again, what do we have? The sun and the moon in constant infinity in the heavens. See, interesting picture, huh? If you saw that somewhere, what do you think? But also our checkered floor. Good and evil. So much in a simple picture, huh? So you can sit here and really think about a lot of this if you wanted. And I don't care if you're Rosicrucian, Buddhist, if you wanted to be just Egyptian, alchemic, I don't care what you want. There's so much in there, it's absolutely incredible. And the best thing of all is this one. If all you guys want to read somebody, read this. Kabbalion. Here he is, right there. The three initiates wrote it. Published by the Library of Alexandria. Ooh, the one that got burnt and everything got lost, right? Well, this book is really interesting. These three initiates wrote it. And a lot of what I spoke about in the earlier part of this, they put together. And they put together in a very good format. It is very easily understood because they realized that they needed to take this knowledge to the average person to be able to understand. So when they wrote this so you could have an introduction to alchemy that you could get to these next stages. You could understand the basic principles of alchemy. Beautifully written. It's only like 226 pages. Probably 3 or 4 hours you blow it out. You know, it's a really nice book. It's so easily written and it makes so much sense. It's incredible. It truly does. But this is one of the passages at the end of it. And I want to read this to you because it's really important in our mindset when I said we're spiritual beings. It says, "And death is not real, even in the relative sense. It is but a birth to a new life. And you shall go on and on and on to higher and still higher planes of life, for eons upon eons of time. The universe is your home, and you shall explore its farthest recesses before the end of time. You are dwelling in the infinite mind of the all, and your possibilities and opportunities are infinite, both in time and space. And at the end of the grand cycles of eon, when the all shall draw back onto itself all it has created, you will go gladly, for you will then be able to know the whole truth of being at one with the all. Such is the report of the illumined, those who have advanced well along the path." Isn't that what we wait for the second coming? When we finally go back to our Creator. We are all living in God's creation from His mind. You all look very solemn. It's a pretty heavy thing, isn't it, at the end? It's a pretty, read it. The more you read it, the more you realize how real that statement is. It's important to all of us. Now, when we understand things like that, and you go through these processes, even partial through the processes, you start to realize how tiny our problems are in our life. We create, by our likes and dislikes, most of our own anger and anxiety. We refuse certain things. And by doing that, we create our own unhappiness. It's not created outside of us. It's created inside. It truly is. And to shed all that and to go from the stone of the philosopher all the way to the philosopher's stone, the great work brings you to that point. To be one, and we all want to get there because we all say it all the time. But boy, do we do the work? No, we don't know the work. No one's ever told us the work. We read the Bible and they tell us how to act, but they tell us how to get there. No one really tells us. And with that, the end. Any questions?
To go to a more temporal level,
Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
the whole history that you talked about,
Mm-hmm.
beginning,
Believe it or not, at one time it was very prevalent. It truly was. A lot of the philosophers and the philosophical schools that they had, this knowledge was out there. It really was. It wasn't for, like you said, the general people, because, again, many were not educated. But if you were with Aristotle, Plato, and you went with some of these alchemic people who were very intellectual back then, and you were their students and stuff, yeah. And people knew it existed. But like people know masonry existed and say it's secretive. They didn't know what existed into it, but the knowledge was there. It was protected. It was protected just a little bit too much. And that's what happened, because as things got destroyed and books were destroyed, it wasn't only one time in the medieval. How many books were destroyed during the Dark Ages? All this stuff was destroyed. The church has some of it buried, you know? If you go to the Vatican and you go look at the way things are formed there, there's a lot of alchemic things all over the place, you know? The obelisks and the stuff like that we see right there, an obelisk sitting right there in front of the Vatican. The obelisks were from Egypt. They actually took one out of there and went to France with it. We even have one here in America that came from there. Why? Why are we so bent on Egyptian? And it was interesting that we talk about that, talk about harmonics all this time. I was watching a documentary on the pyramids. And this old gentleman, like old sage, but you think he's an old sage. You know, he doesn't have many teeth left, and he's got this little hat on and his white robe, and he grew up there next to the pyramids. And as a kid, he played in them because they weren't shut off. They played in them. He went swimming around them and stuff like that when the water filled up into certain areas. He had a ball in it. But he also went to school. He was an archaeologist, and the guy was brilliant. And he's sitting there talking about the pyramids. He says, you know, the problem with the pyramids, they were never tombs. That's a myth. No mummies were ever found inside the pyramids. Never. What were they, though? He says, we've got to start thinking different. What it really came out to be, or the new thought is coming out with pyramids, is that there were energy fields. Because the water beneath them, there's water that actually flows beneath them. And they're very distant from the Nile. At one time, the Nile overflowed even closer and was right up against them. And when they have these walkways that just stop, and you can see where there was a water line. And they get off the boats and they go to the temples. Because these, when you went inside, were temples. And it was all about energy. Because the water running underneath would create electricity, electric charge. And even to this day, they can measure it. But what has happened in their theory is that all the white stone that was on the pyramids, there's only like a base layer now, have fallen off. That was contained. It was contained inside that pyramid. So now it just leaks out. So its full power purpose is no longer there. And they even went down inside, and when they looked through some of the portholes that were there, the alignments of the pyramids, with the alignments inside and being able to view, it was like an observatory. That again, the three of Giza, the three in the belt of Orion, right? And if you take the way all the pyramids are basically placed, and you took them and you put them up against the sky, it's really interesting how the Nile crosses, as the Milky Way crosses, the path between Pleiades and Orion. And that's the same setup of the pyramids. I mean, identical setup. You know, it's so as we become more and more knowledgeable in ancient things, we start to learn more and more. So it's absolutely riveting, some of the stuff that comes up. It's mind-boggling. This stuff is tough. This is really difficult stuff. Going into talking about the pyramids and ancient things, and we can talk hooked X and, Stonehenge and all the stuff like that, and we can theorize. But none of that has anything for you to do as this would be if you truly wanted to try and follow it. It's mind-boggling.
It's interesting modern physics.
Yep, we're just getting to it today. So much knowledge was lost for so long that's why there were the Dark Ages. So much was destroyed. It was all about control and power and keeping the people down. Kings and the popes, they didn't want powerful people. They didn't want intelligent people. They want you to work the land and pay me homage. Freedom that the Knights Templar and the Freemasons wanted scared them. Freedom? Equality? What are you, crazy? I lose all my money. No way is that going to happen. And that truly was the power play of the Middle Ages and the Dark Ages. Now, even during the Middle Ages, the Renaissance, the Medici family in Florence, Italy, actually had a guy go out, and the Medicis were a very wealthy family. They're the ones that got Michelangelo to come and carve the David, right, and stuff like that. They believed in art and culture. They also had a guy who they sent out all the time, and he would go and find rare books. Well, he wasn't very happy, Medici wasn't very happy because he didn't get rare enough books until he got one book that was the Hermetic book, which was supposed to be the Book of Thoth. And then he finally was happy that this guy did his job properly and paid him wealthily for it because he wanted that knowledge. So it's been around, and it's come through history. That's why in the beginning, with the famous people, showed from way back, 4,000 years ago, even earlier, all the way to present time, and there were more. I mean, I could list hundreds of people, and some that we would know and some that we really wouldn't, I mean, I looked at somebody who would not have an idea, unless probably you were in certain realms, But it's really amazing how it has continued nonstop through the course of history. There's always been people who have had the knowledge. And a lot of the scientific inventions and findings and theories, they claim have come to a lot of people who were enlightened, that they had that experience, and that's where the knowledge came from. Because Edison was smart. When he said, someone asked him about 75 experiments that went bad. He said, none of them went bad. I just learned more on how not to do it. Again, attitude and point of view, right? He learned more by what he made in the mistakes before he got to that. So, anyone else? All right, well, thank you, guys. Thank you. All right, all right.